Good evening, councillors, members of the public. We're ready to start. Apologies for absence is always the first item on our agenda. We do have apologies from councillors Chesser, Dubois and Fuller. Do you accept those apologies?
Move acceptance.
Yeah. Thank you, councillor Willis. We haven't heard anything from councillor Davis. We haven't heard anything from councillor Jones. And I note councillor Gray yes. So toss that round. Whilst we're doing that, we'll move on to declarations of interest. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests to declare? No. Other interests. Now, I have to raise a hand to that one because there is an item in due course with regards to museum use. A, I am a museum trustee appointed by this council. B, I'm the person acting on behalf of the museum trustees and museum trust in its negotiations with the council solicitor. So when we get to that, I'll explain a certain amount about it, and I'm going to actually leave the room so you can talk about it without me being around. Are there any other interests to declare? No? Requests for dispensation? None? Gifts or hospitality under the value of £50? None. And any inappropriate gifts or hospitality? No. Minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. That's the one held on Tuesday, the 19th of September. Present myself, Councillor Clark, Councillor Gray, Councillor Arnold, Councillor Wade, Councillor Vital, Councillor Hutton, Councillor Arnold again. That's a neat feat. You'll be here twice. Councillor Chesser and Councillor Shurer. Anybody want to propose that we accept those minutes? I think Councillor Arnold ought to second it. He was there twice.
Seconded twice.
Seconded twice, yes. All those in favour? That brings us on to public participation. There appear to be three members of the public here to talk to us about the annual vintage fair, which we held next year.
Good evening, councillors and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity for us to present. I hope and you remember the 2019 Vintage Festival that sadly we weren't able to repeat in 2020. And I hope you've been able to have a look. We sent around to everybody a 2-minute video which showed you what took place last time. And we're trying to make it bigger and better and to engage more with as many more people as possible. So the date is the 18th of May, 2024, 9 AM to 5 AM. And we're hoping to fill North Street, West Street and the marketplace completely with stalls like we did last time, from tractors, etc., to steam engines, to vintage cars, buses, fire engines, anything that was sort of vintage. We're going to focus on the community. We want it to be an opportunity for the whole town to get involved, to give every group, whoever they might be, whether they're businesses or clubs or associations, to engage with it, to take part, and to help raise some money for their own purposes. All shops are being invited to have a stall outside of their shop in the marketplace. We'll have local bands performing. The sold-out tower tours will take place again in St Peter's Church, which was hugely popular. And all the monies raised will go towards the Howell Community Fund to very important local projects. We're looking for upwards of 4,000 people, which is what we estimate when we haven't got a charging opportunity, we can't sell tickets, so we were estimating how many people came last time. The Vintage Festival Committee is covering all organisation, all the entertainment, covering the insurance, and the manpower on the day for sort of helping to run the event. Last time we raised just over £10,000 for the St Peter's Church town clock to get that repaired and to get sort of set that on its way to being fully repaired and restored. And we aim to raise funds from this event by charging for some of the stalls for those who want to, charities and association, and a local raffle supported by all the local businesses. We're looking for a little bit of support from collaboration with the Town Council. You've always been very good to us. So how can the Town Council help us? We've made an application for a grant to make the event safe. The most important of all events and making them safe is the one-way system and the road closures, which is so important. I think we've seen with all the sort of various events that have happened over the last sort of probably 10 years since the one-way system was introduced, and the road closure blockages were put up properly, and we've now got all the signage to do for it, is to have professional marshals, because you need professional marshals on those points. It's almost impossible today to ask local residents to stand there and to take the abuse from our local residents, which is unfortunately is a thing of today. And so we're looking for a sort of a grant, if possible, of £2,500 just to fund to make that bit, so we can make the rest happen and we can raise some money for some events and things into the town. We're also going to be using the Queen Victoria Hall, where we have we're going to have vintage teas taking place, which is going to be the volunteer action, and it's one of the older helpers. They're going to do vintage teas to raise, and they're going to sell the teas to make the money to help them raise some money towards their organisations. And we're going to sort of hopefully, with the support of Emma and so forth, we've been talking about using the cones and so forth. We've collaborated all of our kit together into the container that's parked quietly in our car park corner, where we're storing everything. So it's and that's sort of again another collaboration with the town. So what we're sort of doing is looking for your support towards it, and if possible, sort of the grants go solely towards the marshalling to make that very safe. With the rest, we've got everything almost in place and ready to go. All the applications are in for the road closures, etc., and they're going through the process. Is it appropriate I ask any questions?
Has everyone seen the slide? Has everyone seen that slide?
The slide,
to move it through.
Tom Cruise.
If you click on the videos and where it said the videos, that should be pictures from the 2019 event, if the link works. It works on my computer.
That's my question for Emma or Philip. Can you remind us what we did last time? Did we pay for the marshalling last time?
No.
So you funded that
We
yourselves?
we did it ourselves and took the abuse, which didn't go down.
Oh, you did it yourself? Oh, no. I mean, I've done that.
Yeah,
And you don't want to do that.
We basically did it, and it's the last time that anybody's
Yeah.
attempted to do it on their own.
Yeah.
And all of our marshals sadly said that is the last time.
Yeah.
I think we did give you a grant though.
We had a small
all the cones and the
yeah,
signage.
like I said, we bought some
Yeah.
signage together. Yeah, there was some support. Sorry, it wasn't this up there for the road closure, but yeah, there was some signage and some small barriers. I think it was. Yeah. So yeah, there was a small grant last time. So we are looking for a little bit of this. I think it's to make this event safe, and with this number of people, it needs to be something, because we actually need to also be around the town organising and making sure everything's sort of happening.
Councillor Wade and Councillor Shearer.
So two questions really. You say the only thing you're looking for is a grant towards the cost of the marshal, and that's around £2,500.
Give or take, yeah, they haven't confirmed the final figure yet.
Right, so my question is, are you asking us to pay you £2,500, and if it's less, you have that as a surplus? If it's more, you pay the difference, or are you looking to send?
Well, once we get the final figure,
Or are you
that
going to
will
send
be,
it to us and
yeah,
then
we're
we
gonna,
sort out the costs when we know what the costs are?
yeah, I mean, we've spoken to Emma and Lisa who booked it for the two food festivals, the last Christmas and the summer.
Yeah.
And it's around the £2,500 mark.
So there'll be a kind of more formal approach when we know exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're hoping to get a final figure. I was hoping to have it for tonight, but sadly it didn't come.
And then the second question is, you said Victoria Hall usage, is that something that we're paying for as well? Or is
Sorry,
that,
Rich?
you're saying Victoria Hall usage between 10 and 6, are you paying for that?
Yes,
as well?
yeah, no, we've booked
Paying
that.
for that
Yeah,
directly?
we'll pay for that. That'll come out of the sort of property. Unless, of course, you'd like to donate it to us, but I think Victoria
Obviously,
Hall.
clarification
Yeah,
on
yeah.
offer.
Yeah, exactly. But no, with the intention is that we would sort of pay for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Short.
Well, in part, you've answered it in terms of my neighbour's questions to you, but I wonder pragmatically, given the town council have booked the marshals for the previous food festival and no doubt are in the process of booking them again for the Christmas market fair thing, whatever, rather than you applying for a grant and us giving you money, would it just not be easier for the town council to book the marshals?
Well, unless it was more expensive than doing one.
I think for me, I'm not, your answer is more important. My own view is the contract should be with people organising the event and the marshals, not the third party or county council's a third party.
Again,
So we
that's
should
also
pay you for you to contract with marshals.
true, but that also leads me to another point, and that is, are you a legal entity? Can you actually book them?
Yes, because with the Vintage Festival is run through the auspices of the Admiral Business Association.
Oh, so you're doing
Yeah,
it through that?
I mean,
Okay.
that's our, and they're
No, that's
operating
fine.
without
That wasn't clear.
Yeah.
That wasn't clear.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, that's, yeah, we are a proper entity. And we've got the insurances all in place.
In which case, ignore what I've said.
Yeah.
Let you know.
Yeah, no, that's, definitely, that's all sorted.
Could I just raise a question, please? Because I was talking with Morag. She said that there was an aspiration to have a celebration for the 75th commemoration of the D-Day invasion. And that had been proposed, I believe, by the council. Now, what concerned me a little bit about that was that there might be some, I don't know what was going to be organised around that. And I think that was early June, and this is like mid-May. It seemed like there might be two events that were occurring quite close together that might be of a similar ilk.
I think we discussed it as it being a good idea to do something, but it's to sort of find out whether we collaborate to do something with the Royal British Legion. I don't think it's been decided how big or small it's going to be.
I don't think that's what we were envisaging.
Yeah,
It got floated last time. I can tell you that one of the things that we discussed last time was the possibility of lighting the beacon that is on the road between Arundel and Blackthorn, but is in Blackthorn Parish and is on land owned by a farmer in Blackthorn. And I can tell you that that's on the agenda for tomorrow night's Blackthorn Parish Council meeting, because there is some talk about some collaboration, but again, nobody's got any firm ideas as to what it should look like, other than the fact that it's a significant event to mark. I don't think we're going to find that that's in any kind of competition with this event. I like others around this table probably remember that 2019 event, and it's a nice idea.
So just a concern that I thought
No,
raised, just to make sure it wasn't
query to raise. That's all.
Just one other question, sorry. If we do, and I suspect we will grant this money, what recognition will the council have for the financial support we give to the OBA for this?
Oh, I mean, we're always, everybody's involved to get support, and we won't sort of say we did well without anybody else. We praise everybody that helps us. We do bring it to everybody's attention where the support has come from. I can't emphasise enough is all the events that we've organised are to promote the town. You know, we don't want to say, aren't we clever? This is all about the town, and come and engage with us and get involved. You know, if you'd like a stall, we can have councillors over the last 30 years all studying together. You can come along and sing. Yeah,
Stop.
We're looking for engagement, and yeah, so it's very much, it's not just us, it's an opportunity for everybody to be involved.
I think it could be positioned in a similar way to the favour last year that we said was in collaboration with the town council, because clearly these things don't happen without your help and your say-so really. So yeah, it's quite important from our perspective.
Conscious of the time, does anybody else have any questions for Philip? Right.
None from me.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I don't think that the grant application is on this agenda.
No, it's on the November
It will
finance,
be a finance next
or
month.
it will be.
Yeah.
And by then you'll hope,
Yeah, well, I'll, hopefully, I might even have it tomorrow morning, so I'll forward straight
Well,
on.
yes, there's a law that says that will happen, so
Yeah.
as soon as you got it, that is.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just quickly, I might add that if the agenda item that's coming up later is that it's favourable from Fletton Fields Association, then the field will be available for the town to use as a community event for everything we're talking about. So there is there's an obvious extension and join up with all this stuff.
Yeah, good point. And one we'll touch on very shortly. In fact, it might be very, very shortly, because in terms of consideration of requests from interested parties, there's nothing other than what we've just heard, and we know that that's going to be talked about at finance next month. And we don't seem to have Helen Harrison or anybody else from Northampton Council here. So strangely enough, the next item we're actually going to discuss happens to be Fletton Field, where it says to receive an update on Fletton Field, to approve costs of evaluation and agree next steps. Councillors may recall that at a previous meeting, we were told the figure that NNC were asking for the field. And following the discussion, we thought it prudent to obtain our own valuation to make sure that what we were being asked to pay wasn't ridiculous. I think I can summarise by saying that our valuation indicates that it isn't ridiculous. It is a realistic figure. And therefore, it seems to me that in terms of agreeing next steps, is there anything that actually stops us proposing here and now the actual purchase of it? I know it's not specifically on the agenda in terms of an amount, but it says agree next steps, and the amount was made clear at a previous meeting. So if the next step that is agreed is to formally agree that figure and move ahead with paying it, you can do so.
I'm going to try and propose that before anyone else gets a chance.
Greedy.
I think Councillor Wayne
Absolutely.
has seconded it. Unless there is anybody who seeks for a variation, we can't quite see what it would be. All those in favour, please. I'm delighted. So that is everybody.
Excellent.
Which is a happy day for this council and all those behind the Fletton Field project.
Just to confirm the amount that Northlands asked.
23,000.
23,000.
So that money is sort of provided for in our estimates and reserves. So it's not like we suddenly find 23,000 we didn't expect to. We've looked to this day for some time. Now, maybe that in terms of agreeing next steps, we may have to go slightly beyond that, because it's one thing to acquire it. The next thing, of course, is that something has to be done with it. Now, we've talked about an arrangement between the council as the owner of the land and those who have got us this far by their determination, who doubtless do not want to suddenly see the matter just become part of some committee of this council. And there is a precedent, I think I referred in the previous meeting to the arrangements that exist in platform with the Playing Field Association, where the field was acquired by the parish council using grant funding, but it's actually operated under an agreement between that body and the council. It seems to me that almost certainly the next step, from our point of view, will be to engage with the Playing Field Association. Anyone do that? Not the Playing Field Association, the Fletton Field Association, Fields, and actually put forward a proposed working document that will actually regulate things. I don't envisage a sort of 30-page semi-commercial lease or anything like that. It just needs to ensure, as much as anything else, that any further public money that might go into that, there is a proper kind of audit trail to show where responsibilities begin and end and so forth. And it'll have to look at things like insurance and so on. And where that's probably best dealt with is within the estates. I'd have thought with the recommendation back to full council, but it may be that that'll be what the estates meeting that I might feel I ought to go on to. Dealt with clutching a copy of the Grattan agreement. Anybody else they want to say at this stage in terms of next steps or otherwise?
Yeah, obviously I'll go back to NNC and say we agree with their evaluation. And I think they'll draw up some terms and conditions that'll obviously come back to the next meeting. But then at some point, we're probably going to have to engage with some legal advice.
I suspect that, as a guess, what the council would do is draft a transfer deed that includes certain covenants of a restrictive nature. They're not going to want us to set off a residential development in the next 10 years or whatever. Not that I think that would be part of our plan. So there is going to be something like that.
And there's also a damaged wall that they've got to sort
There are
out.
certain other issues that
Or,
we say.
take it.
Whether we'll ultimately feel the need to instruct our own solicitors, I think we can judge when we've seen the agreement. If the advice is that we should let them handle it, fine. It may be that it is sufficiently clear and simple from our perspective that we feel we're happy enough to just proceed with it. Councillor Gray.
I just wanted to ask about the access from Blackthorn Road that's allowed us from the builder. Has that all been resolved and sorted?
No, that's something that I'll speak to NNC about and see,
Okay.
because I think even from our evaluation, he did say that if you can secure something with that access, even if you just get a right of way, but not own it.
I mean, it's a little bit of icing on the cake. It's not essential to the project, but it would benefit the project. But if it's going to be done, it kind of needs to be done properly. It could be done by, in effect, the owner of the land simply granting us an easement to right of way over it.
Yeah.
Possibly the condition that we are responsible for its ongoing maintenance. And so, but ultimately, that has to be a matter for the owner. He's indicated in the past a wish to assist. It may be that now we're actually pulling this thing over the line. We can firm that up. I'll take the clerk first.
The other access from Fletton House Car Park, NNC are going to register that, and they will keep that. It's not part of the transfer.
But it will be on the basis that it's.
But we'll get right
of way,
of
so,
way over it.
they're not suddenly going to treat it as some kind of ransom strip.
Yeah.
Paying £10,000 a year and ready to go across it. I think there might be a certain public uprising if anything of that nature is proposed. That's right.
So quick question, given the immense interest in the whole Fletton Fields saga, it may well be worth the council pretty quickly tomorrow drawing up something that can go out in social media and to the wider public. I'm sure there are thousands of people waiting on our YouTube channel learning about this. We've got 3 eminent members of the public listening to it, but I think it's worth celebrating and it's worth us getting something out pretty quickly. Not just to say we've approved the purchase, but also to manage people's expectations. It will take a while to
Yeah.
get their transfer sorted. It will take a while to get Flettonfield's agreement with the council sorted. It will take a while to get everything finalised. But I think it's worth something from us pretty quickly, so we're shown to be in control of events.
I think that must be right. This is a very significant acquisition.
It's huge.
For the council. It's something we've tried to put over the line for quite a long time now. And it's very gratifying that we are on the verge of getting it done.
Let's celebrate that.
Are you suggesting that that be done within the office, or are you suggesting it should be done by Coles?
I think it should be drawn up by Rebecca and I'm happy to look at it. I think if we do it through the working group, it'll be quick. We don't want lots of people involved.
No, absolutely.
So if we do,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
happy to work with you. And
Okay.
I'm sure that we can sort that out. Anything else on Flettonfield? Not for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you've done.
You want to stay for reports?
Our work is done.
I'm sure we'll find you another project soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again.
Right, the next item is to consider a response to the consultation on the Liverpool Plans Greenway strategy and the Rushden to Wellingborough proposed route. I have a feeling that of those two simultaneous consultations, we might be rather more interested in one than the other, because quite what interest we would have, other than a very general interest, in the Rushden to Wellingborough proposed route, I'm not sure. But in terms of the actual Greenway strategy, my recollection, and I have to say I failed to make a note of it, is that the date for responding to the consultation, if we do, is such that we will have to respond to it before our next meeting, which is always somewhat problematic when something comes onto the agenda like this. People may have been unaware of it till they saw the item on the agenda. People may or may not have had an opportunity to look at the material. I have to say I was away last week and I haven't managed to read it. Has anybody actually had an opportunity to study it? And if so, do they have any kind of recommendations for us? If not, is somebody willing to look at it with a view perhaps to circularising all councillors with some sort of a briefing paper, stroke recommendation?
Sorry, because I'm not volunteering my time. I'm potentially going to volunteer somebody else's time. I wonder whether or not we could involve Tony Hoyle, since he is the whatever it is,
Yeah.
to
His paths are slightly different though, because these are the right of way paths that go across fields. And
This is.
this is an actual cycle way.
Yes, it's more a transition outlook point possibly than that. Councillor Clark.
I had a quick look earlier and I spoke to the Greenway people about a year ago. And from what I could see on the presentation, the original Greenway plan of Thrapston to here and on to Peterborough seems to have fallen into abeyance slightly. And they're now looking primarily at Corby to Amble route via Tresham, New Garden Village, or whatever it's called. And that, there's no detailed plans, there's just a sort of suggestion map. And that seems to be the way the path now looks like it's coming. And I had a look at the questionnaire briefly, but until you tell it who you are, if you're a councillor or an individual, it won't let you get any further. So I didn't want to say that was one thing. I'm happy to, as I sort of nominated myself through cycle things last meeting, I'm happy to have a look at it. But I need to do it probably tomorrow, because I fly at 5 AM on Saturday, and I'll be back on the first day then. So
Well, that would be devotion above and beyond, but it would be very useful if you felt able to. And the alternative, in essence, is that we don't respond as a council, but an interested councillors can, of course, respond in a personal capacity, as long as they make it clear that that's what they're doing.
it seems.
But it does seem to me the sort of thing on which actually we ought to take a stand as a council. And if there'd been a little bit longer for this consultation, I doubt it would come before planning, possibly, as being a part of this council that kind of fits with a recommendation to full council, but the timescales don't work for that. Councillor Hunt.
I was just going to say that I haven't had a chance to be probably on just a very brief skim now. It seems very high level at this stage, so it probably is not too much of a concern. We need to be concerned maybe when the detail comes a bit later.
I got the impression that they were basically looking down the bottom of the email saying they're like a named person nearby that they're going to talk to, which effectively would probably be me. So that's fine.
Well, in that case, if we can ask you to do whatever you can, if you manage it, more send it around, we'll go from there. Right, let's move on to an update regarding ample medical practice. I've got this time to my right instead of my left. Councillor Rockcliffe, you've been beavering away at this.
I have indeed, Mr. Mayor, thank you. As a first step, could somebody please flag up on the big board the paper that I drew up?
You can't.
Which is
I haven't
clear by
I haven't
cons.
set that up. It's not set up to go on the board.
In that case, I have to simply.
Everybody's received a
Right,
copy
right,
though.
Copy of it.
Everybody's had a copy.
Well, forgive me, but I assume perhaps too readily that as been cleared by comms and is marked by a star in the agenda, it will be accessible. But never mind, I'm willing to perform orally.
It is accessible. We have
We've
it.
all had a
a
copy.
copy of that.
Ah,
It's sent out electronically.
by comms. So, well, in that case, fair enough. Then I'll simply adapt what I say now to take account of that, to avoid simply covering the same ground unnecessarily. In essence, the purpose of this report, that you all received electronically, and which would, having been approved by comms, will be published in the Oundle Advertiser in November. The purpose is to give the people of Oundle the key facts, both as to the strength of the Oundle medical practice now, and also, under the side heading looking ahead, indicating what scope there is for expansion or funding for expansion when we get to that stage. First of all, present capacity. At my meeting in September with Dr. Leeson, the senior doctor, and the chief executive, Jessica Horton, her name is, of the Lakeside Health Care Group, who are effectively the parent body of, among other things, the Oundle medical practice. I was given the strength up to that point, and I think it's essentially the same strength now. 4 GP partners, 1 salaried GP. He's retiring, he or she is retiring soon, but will be replaced by a GP partner. 1 advanced nurse practitioner, 1 community nurse, 3 practice nurses, and 3 healthcare assistants. Both Dr. Leeson and Ms. Morton indicated that they felt that this enabled them to cope satisfactorily with present demand. In fact, I think that they indicated they felt comfortable with it. So that's the situation as of now. But obviously, we know the population of Oundle is expanding, not altogether fast. So I now need to move to what will be published on the looking ahead. The Lakeside Healthcare Group, in the practice, they maintain ongoing contact with the NHS Northamptonshire Integrated Care Board, the ICB. Now, those of us who've taken interest in how the NHS as a whole works, and it's really a mass of really confederations, self-governing practices, and everything else within confederations. In fact, a certain parallel to the Holy Roman Empire until Napoleon simplified it under French rule. Never mind about that. Nevertheless, the ICB, they're pivotal to the distribution of funding which comes right from the top, from the Secretary of State for Health, really pivotal. Now, so the ICB maintain contact with the Nixon Healthcare Group and all the other practices, etc. They actively seek contributions from developers, which is used to supplement the money that the Secretary of State gives them to spread around. Now, the ICB have told the practice and me officially that they will use whatever Section 106 contributions they pay to developers to supplement the money that the Secretary of State expects to give them, and make that available after the occupation of the 50th house on the Cotterstock Road site, and which is expected now in January 2024. And really, the snail's pace of everything is going ahead. Because obviously, developers are not going to build houses that nobody wants to buy. So building is going ahead at a snail's pace. Now, money will also be released, both from the Secretary of State and from the developers, after the occupation of the first house on the St. Christopher's Drive site. The building is not even started yet. So, summarising this, there is money in the pipeline, which of course begs the question, which I have not covered in my paper because it's fairly delicate. First of all, what would that money be best used for in practice? And secondly, would any problems rear their heads? Now, both Dr. Leeson and Ms. Borden indicated that they would then, come the time, would be going towards expanding the present building, which inevitably would mean expanding upwards, given that there's very little room indeed, in fact there's none for expanding sideways. Within the building, they have already reconfigured it very actively to make the best use of it for their staff. Now, building upwards would need that bit more money, but at that point, it would be fair to say for the practice to say to the ICB now, whereas if we started pressing the ICB now, they would say, wait for it, we have more immediate needs. So that is where we are. If building had been done upwards, obviously that would to some extent mean that at times, it occurs to me at least, I haven't got into that with Dr. Leeson this morning, some services could be interrupted. So how could those be maintained? Well, letting my imagination run ahead a bit vigorously, well, we might be in occasionally, not too often, to night shifts and such like, but hopefully only if pressure was acute. Because so far, the practice have rather come out against the idea of a separate building elsewhere in the animal community. Now, actually, the ICB did give me indicative figures, pound values, for what money they're looking from the developers towards, and what money they expect that they know they're likely to have from Secretary of State, already at their stage of the pipeline. But they asked me to keep those figures in very much in confidence, so I've not repeated them in this paper, if only for the reason that indicative figures can and do change. So, perhaps I've talked too much at length, but nevertheless, there we are. So I'm very willing to answer any questions. Yes.
One of the things that occurs to me if their consideration is to build up is that therefore I assume employ more staff, to see more patients. What's the purpose of building up then?
Well, more space.
Just space,
To accommodate.
not to increase the amount of surgery staff and
Well,
see more patients.
Perhaps, although perhaps one would follow the other. Obviously,
My understanding it was they would then employ more staff.
I think you're right. That is bound to follow. But nevertheless, let's cross that bridge when we come to it.
The issue for me is if their plan is to build up and therefore more staff, more patients all at one time, so there isn't such a waiting list. You know, it's already full, the car park now, whenever anybody goes for an appointment. So where would people park? Would it all be down Blackthorn Road? You know, because they've got no further space to increase parking.
That is perfectly correct.
Staff or patients?
Well, now, this is a larger problem. Quite frankly, our great British public have fallen far too much in love with the motor car. And of course, Owl basically was put into place in the horse-drawn age. And even after the Second World War, far fewer people had cars, even when there was more petrol off the ration. Part of the larger problem, there again, realistically, we can't answer that question tonight. We'd be wasting our time if we attempted to do so. It will need to be addressed, and believe you me, we British were practical people. We will address it one way or another. And after all, some of us who were in public life, or public service, in the 60s, remember the Buchanan Report, living with the car. That will be drawable on to some extent and adapted come the time. So that's all. That's the only comfort I can give you.
Just an observation, but I think I think I heard that this has already been approved for publication yet. So just a bit concerned that there's a mention of, there's a line that says, use any S106 contributions, which we all know what that means, but for communication, probably means not a lot. So for future reference, maybe we could try and add a few words that explains what that means.
Okay, if I may.
I know what it means.
So, in fact, for the benefit of those who don't know what it
We all know
means,
what it means.
I think who might be aiming this at may have less understanding of it.
It's a good point, well made, and so we'll have to address that.
well, in fact, actually, look at the winged words. Any section 106 contributions received. Yes, in fact, a right of rights, I should have drafted from developers, although going back a minute, I think I did, but I rather think that Elon Higgins, the ICP, who is the senior officer there, she struck out from developers. But never mind. If any members of our public want to know, well, they will ask, and they will be told.
Okay, thank you very much, Rupert, for being up to speed with that. I still privately think that the only ultimate solution is a second practice, but we didn't open up that debate. So. Let's move on, because there's still quite a lot of meat on this agenda. The next item is to receive my report. I did circulate a brief report over weekend, having been away. And then there's the clerk's report, that too has been circulated. Is there anything on there that you want to expand upon, draw to our attention?
On my report, at the last meeting, we said I'd look into the community ownership fund. I have done, and you first of all apply for an expression of interest, which you do with quite a lot of funding. But it categorises assets as venues and meeting places, and lists community centres, cinemas, galleries, various different things. There's no mention of car parks in there, so I think we would struggle to get any sort of funding for a car park from that particular fund.
Disappointing, but perhaps not unduly surprising. Councillor Wade.
So a number of just questions where we're looking for updates, or we don't know what the story is. The dog bin on Fletton Fields, any movement on that?
Yeah, we've just approved the original valuation.
No, the dog bin, not the valuation.
The dog bin. No, I've not heard anything.
And feedback of the minibus, I know that you applied for that, but when are we expecting a response on that?
Quite soon, but
But
his minibus is broken down. And he's going to get back to me when it's back on the road, and that was a couple of weeks ago. So no news is no news.
I don't think it's the same with the transport study, we're waiting for edits, has that been submitted?
Max has sent it to me in the last few days. I've sent back a version to make sure it looks all right. I put it on Teams with all the data, and if Max is happy, we can make sure people can see it.
Still making progress.
I'm almost finished, just needs to go public. You can look at it, it's there if you want.
No, that's it. Councillor Shaw.
Can I just, first of all, just bounce back to your report, Mayor, in which you talk about a potential meeting with the school. You pose it as a question to which I would fully support a further meeting and encourage you, maybe with the Deputy Mayor, to go ahead and arrange such a meeting.
Yes.
I've not had anything.
I think we have asked them, have a look when we asked and a gentle reminder.
Yeah.
So there's been why they
I just raise it because you mentioned in your report more as a question, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So I was responding to that.
Yeah.
And if we can then go back to the clerk's report, I'm probably going to look at my colleague down the way here as well, Jamie.
Yeah.
Under, it's right at the end of the report, I think it might be the very last item, on the residents' parking spaces, where it says, and I think I should have noted this before, it says, Estates Committee to continue investigating, no decision has been made about residents' parking spaces. I thought we had made a decision that we can't really accommodate that.
That's a good question, actually. I'm not sure we ever fully answered that.
If we haven't, it needs to go back onto the agenda.
On the estate's agenda. But I think I thought that's what it was going to do. Because it came to full council, but obviously we weren't going to make a decision
Yeah,
about
I'm
that.
just worried that it's somehow in a void.
Yeah, I think it is. I think you're probably right. I think
So-
we got waylaid by other things.
I think
Joining
flooding.
lodgings, flooding.
Flooding thing
Yeah.
took over.
So in order for this to have a decision, does it come back to estates? or-
I think so, because that's where it originally was.
Okay.
So you either, estates
So
need to
maybe
make a
mention that to
recommendation
Lisa
as
to
to
get
yes
it
or
onto
no.
an agenda, and then we can push that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, good question.
I also noticed that we have had a copy of the agreement from Blackthorn.
Yes,
I thought you might not have had it because this is probably where the clerk at Blackthorn had to resign due to ill health. So
I think I must have just
Just
got it.
in terms of not having the parish clerk.
Yeah,
But I'm pleased to see you've got it. It seems to me that bearing in mind what we just discussed earlier, that's probably yet another item to go on the agenda.
I mean, it's worth handing to states, for having read through it, it looks like your playing field association, they actually insure it themselves and things like that, whereas I think the town council will be in ownership and will insure it.
It may very well be that we look
Yeah.
at it and large chunks of it we may decide not to adopt, but it was a sort of starting point of
Yeah.
something. But
Yeah,
can I ask
definitely.
that goes on the agenda for estates.
Yeah, I'll
Look
pass
at
that to Lisa.
To look at a draft agreement, and then that could be part of the background papers that could go out with it. But I think if we're going to talk about that, I'll try and get it onto the estates meeting if I can. That, I think, that all deals with the parks report. The next one is an update following attendance at the Northants CALC annual conference. I think David Fuller circulated a report with regard to that.
I like how he didn't attend, his name's not on it.
No, he didn't, did he? It wasn't. I should have pulled it out. I don't know why I got that far. Right, well, my apologies to councillors Wade and Shura, who were in fact the representatives of non-council Fuller at all. Is there anything you want to add to Weston?
I don't think so. As we said in the medical report, it's all there. I hope people read it. The only two questions I have, unless Max has any other questions, are, what should we do about AI? I know Evan's mentioned it before. We know that the Northants County Council, whatever they're called, have got a task force. Should we and how do we make sure that how do we make the best use of AI going forward? Because there are so many thoughts and ideas that are presented to us. And then secondly, it might be worth a visit to Rothwell, whoever that might be, because they will vote in the best council. Well, if they are the best council, what can we learn? And if they're not the best council, why aren't we the award? So those are my two questions, and I'll welcome people's thoughts.
Speaking on that point, Platform Parish Council was a relatively recent winner of the best council award. So they might also be a model to look at.
Okay.
Let me try to do it in that regard. But that is a very worthwhile point, actually, to get involved with other councils. You never stop learning, and you might look at things and suddenly say, why didn't we think of that? Or why have we been doing it that way for the last 20 years when it looks simpler to do it another way? So,
Both of those things.
Just to say, I know the clerk at Rothwell, and at Christmas was invited to a Christmas do for all the town clerks. Yeah, so.
Could you perhaps then approach?
But I don't remember ever seeing, I mean, I know it does happen each year at the Northants Carol, but I don't remember seeing anything.
Well, so I refer you back to our second, so the last point of the summary, lots of awards were given out to lots of people. We had no idea. We had no idea what they were for, what the criteria were, or any of that stuff. And so that's why we thought it would be useful for either of us or both of us, with Emma and anyone else, to go talk to Rothwell and say, how do you do stuff, what do you do, what can you learn that's different, and also make best use of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to follow this up with whoever and make further recommendations to this group, this meeting, based on our understanding of why Rothwell have been singled out. And I've noticed what you said about Blackthorn. I guess Rothwell probably a bit more similar.
Yes, clearly.
So perhaps an action point, if I might suggest, this is not proposed, it's just a thought. Maybe we go and talk to Rothwell either before or after Christmas, I don't care.
I mean, I can also contact Danny Moody and just say, how did they win? Or what was the criteria? And I mean, I can't remember. I always, every week and every month, pass on the updates, the mini updates. I may have missed it, but I don't remember seeing anything.
Maybe you can't.
I think you and I both missed it.
So I don't know. Yeah, so
So I think that's one action point that came out is if we take action, if Emma and I or Emma and Max, I don't care who, but I think if at least two of us can go and talk to Rothwell, that would be a good idea. The bigger point, because that's important, it's very nice, but it's also about efficiency and all that kind of stuff. But the other point which supports that, I think, is the use of AI. There are so many applications that may or may not be useful to us. To councillors as well. And so how might we benefit as a councillor, as well as how might the council benefit as an entity? So I know it's not my meeting, but I know the council.
Mark, I'm congratulating you for using the phrase meaningless word salad, which I enjoyed tremendously. AI, did they say positive things, negative things, bit of both?
And it can be extremely negative, as we will see in the coming election, we'll see already, particularly around Israel. I'm not going to go there. It can be very positive. So there are all kinds of efficiencies that were demonstrated in terms of writing minutes, in terms of writing agendas, in terms of preparing communications to power. And I know you talk about that.
Yeah, we've talked
with
about that,
enthusiasm. So great. And whether it's negative or positive, if it's negative, we need to manage the consequences. If it's positive, we need to take advantage of the implications. So I think, again, that's something I'm happy to volunteer to work on with Emma and the team, particularly because it's mostly comms.
And sorry, linked to this, it's not in the report, but it's in my notes. There are two town councils in Kent which are currently using a software tool that apparently is quite useful for gathering input from the town, from views on all sorts of different things. So again, we didn't want to burden the report, but it may be that we want to look at that and how we could use it to our advantage just in the future.
To augment that, one of the advantages that was given about the Kent Council is when you do surveys, we try to do multiple choice questions to try and make it easy to assimilate together the data. One of these pieces of software takes freeform, analyses the freeform, and uses that to manipulate and codify the information that comes back. So it makes it easier to gain views from the citizens or residents, whatever. We're not sitting on.
You know, we put that on the agenda for a future meeting.
Yes.
Just the
I think
declaration
both of
of
those
the
things, I think there was a lot we could have enjoyed, we could have learned more, had other things happened, and that's feedback that you may want to give. But I'll be very happy to work on both of those things with the council as part of the concept.
I think certainly as somebody who knows about as much as I've read in the newspapers about AI and how it works and its applications, it would be useful to find out whether any councils are currently using it, but perhaps more local to us and to talk to, or whether indeed now we've got any information about packages or anything else, so that maybe you could research it and come back to us with some sort of a paper and let us actually take a proper look at that. Fine. Any other questions to either Councillor Shura or Councillor Wade? Not Councillor Hughes, who's here to answer me anyway. Right, okay, let's move on. Right, the next item is about the renewal of the museum lease. A saga that seems to have gone on almost forever. Councillor Shura and myself are two of the appointed trustees from this council to it, so I suppose we ought to note another interest for Councillor Shura as well. Councillor Chester and Councillor Fuller are the other two representatives. And essentially the position is this, that the museum lease expired some considerable while ago, and the museum simply held over under the terms of the original lease. But But it then sought a lease renewal because it found that without a current lease, it was difficult to access certain amounts of potential grant funding, which it was obviously anxious to tap into. So it sought a new lease from the council, and to cut a very long story short, the council solicitors produced an initial draft lease that was very, very different to the existing lease, and frankly, very much more kind of commercial and not in any way, frankly, suitable for the museum. That has now resolved itself to the extent that what has now been put to the museum is a lease by reference to the old lease. So to all intents and purposes, it says the old lease applies with whatever modifications are made. And it had been my understanding that, in essence, short of a new term of years from X point to Y point and a relevant update to the rent, to all intents and purposes, everything else would be the same, not least because on a lease renewal, absent agreement, that's what happens. The lease isn't substantially altered in favour of the landlord or indeed in favour of the tenant unless the two of them negotiate it that way. But what surprised the museum was that when the new lease emerged, it contained a clause that is not in the current lease, which has the effect of excluding the provisions of what is called Part 2 of the Landlord and Tenant Act 1954. I'm not about to give you a lecture of property law. Suffice it to say, that's the bit of legislation that essentially enables a tenant whose lease has expired to remain in situ and seek a new grant of lease on terms to be agreed between the tenant and the landlord. And it will usually, as I say, be broadly identical, but of course, perhaps the key difference is going to be around the rent. And essentially, if the landlord comes back and suggests a rent that is far higher than the tenant is willing to pay, the tenant could go to the courts and say to the courts, I don't agree with this. I want you to set a new rent. The court would then have to hear evidence about what an appropriate rent was. And if the tenant didn't like the court's decision, the tenant could then say, all right, in that case, I don't want to release. And of course, their lease arrangement would effectively end. What has happened is that the solicitors acting on behalf of the council, as far as I can tell off their own bat, simply included a provision in the new proposed lease to exclude security of tenure. So that isn't the current situation, it would be new. And of course, it's in danger of creating precisely the same problem that the museum had before, except worse. Because as the time ticks down on that lease, the council would be perfectly entitled at the end of it to say, off you go. And the museum would be homeless, and presumably therefore effectively would collapse. Now, maybe the council wouldn't do that, but it could. That, I think, is going to cause problems for the museum, both in terms of its volunteers, both in terms of the management side of it and the day-to-day running of it, because I think they might become rather distressed at the thought that although this is a long-term lease, it will be a finite one, and it may impact upon their ability to obtain grant funding. So the request from the museum, effectively, which was made to the council solicitors through the solicitor assisting the museum, which just happens to be myself, was that that clause should come out. But of course, that has to be a decision taken by this council. What I'm going to leave you all to discuss in a minute in my absence and the circumstances. But if I can assist with any information beforehand, I will. Suffice it to say that the museum is so keen to resolve this matter that it has a meeting organised for Monday night at which it hopes it's going to be told that the terms of the lease are effectively now agreed. They can be told exactly, what it looks like. They can approve it, and with luck, if not by the end of this month, certainly by this time next month, the thing will be finally finished. So that's the thinking, but that's the issue that's arisen. So like you wanted to.
I was just going to try and clarify something. I think what I've understood is you're saying that the clause that they would like not to be there means that if at some point at the end of the lease we don't agree new terms, they can go to an independent body to get.
In essence, yes, under the legislation,
But can I just
do that.
Okay, so but my observation is that we're not charging them anything like a commercial rate, it's way below what would ever be considered a commercial rate.
That's also true.
So I don't really quite understand what the issue would be for us if that still existed, because any sane person at any point in the future would say, well, it's not a commercial rate.
You're right, the rent that is charged is not a commercial rent, the extent of the area occupied in the courthouse by the museum. It's a concessionary rate that the council determined upon previously by way of support to the museum, because if it pushed it too high, the museum couldn't afford it, because effectively its income streams are limited, to say the least. I think that the issue from the museum's point of view would be that if this clause was included, A, it wouldn't therefore be a renewal of the existing lease, because the existing lease doesn't have that provision. And on the face of it, they're entitled to say it should have, it shouldn't be changed in that way without their agreement. Of course, you're right, if that new lease came into existence without that provision, so that it was exactly the same as now, as that lease wound down, the same scenario would occur. The council would have to decide whether to offer the museum a new lease. It may offer it again at a sort of concessionary rent, or it might not. If it wasn't offered at a concessionary rent, you're probably right, because the museums might have to look at that and say, well, if we took it to the courts, are the courts going to agree that the rent should be at a level which we can't afford, which might produce the same result? But I think that there are two sort of, apart from that practical effect, there's the kind of emotional effect on the museum of putting in that clause when it wasn't there before and making it look like there's a sort of Damocles hanging over it. And secondly, I think they worry about whether it will impact their ability to get funding, because that lease would automatically end. Doesn't stop the council going back and offering a new one, but it would have no obligation in law to do so. That's the issue.
Yeah, which is, so I mean, kind of, to my mind, we're kind of doing what we've been here many times before, which is that this council either decides it wants to give ongoing, long-term commitment to supporting the museum, or it doesn't. If it wants to do it, then I don't see any real issue with taking that clause out, because at the end of the day, if we want to do it, I'm not making just a judgment here whether we do or we don't. If we want to do it, I don't think it makes any difference to us, because we've given a 20-year commitment to them anyway. If at the end of that 20 years we decide we're not prepared to do it anymore, or we put a commercial rent in which case the museum will close and we can't afford it. So we either decide as a council that we want to give another 20-year commitment to this organisation at significant cost to the taxpayer and ultimately inevitably, or we don't. And I think many times in the past we've said we do, and that's fine. But we've got to recognise that that's what it is. It's a massive subsidy to this organisation in the town.
I think that's the point at which it might be sensible for me to leave. Because I feel that it may constrain debate.
Are you leaving on the basis you're a trustee of the museum?
No, I'm leaving on the basis that I'm actually acting for the museum trust. I have to say, on an unpaid and voluntary basis, as it were, but it's been run through me. So it doesn't seem appropriate. I mean, that would be rather like me going and listening at the door as some other client is maybe having a discussion about what to do, which might give them an unfair advantage. So to speak.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask me a question if I answer it.
The agenda item says to consider renewal lease, and confirm if the renewal will be contracted out to the landlord and tenant.
And I didn't write the agenda, but I'm assuming that the reason it's worded in that way is because that's what the draft
Yeah.
currently says. And the museum is saying, we don't want that, please take it out. So if the council doesn't want to confirm that it will be contracted out, council is perfectly entitled to take that view. It just proposes that, as opposed to proposes that it doesn't.
Just on that basis, the document we have in front of us, which, is that the one that they don't want or the one they do want?
You'll have to show it to me because I can't remember.
It's the new lease, but obviously,
New lease,
So effectively,
somewhere
we're
around that
voting on
clause
that.
7.
yeah,
Yes, it's whether or not that clause stays in it,
In it,
in which
yeah.
case it's for the museum to decide what to do about it, or whether it comes out of it, in which case I think I know what the museum will do.
My understanding, which is a long time since I looked at the MGA, from a tenant's point of view, that if you've got that in, you have security for at least until the court decides what the right level will be. Are you saying the museum don't want security tenure?
That clause takes away security tenure.
Oh, I
If
see.
it remains.
Right.
Because it contracts the thing out of
Out,
that arrangement.
yeah.
Gotcha.
In that case, I do think we do it.
So I think it's time I stepped outside. Just don't forget to ask me back again.
no, I won't.
Presumably you check this, don't you?
I assume so.
Yes, that's.
Which I'm not entirely sure on that.
I don't think you
Yeah, I
can.
don't think that.
But basically, as I understand it, then, what the museum is saying is that the existing lease, which includes the landlord and tenant clause, says that if they continue with that clause in, then if we screw them over with the rent, it's out of their hands and goes to the court.
Hang on, can I just point something out? I think it's a complete red herring, because in case you hadn't realised, they apply for a town council grant every year to pay the rent.
Yes.
Correct.
We are paying the rent, not the museum.
Museum.
I don't think they've done it every year, but they certainly did last year.
COVID was a bit of
Yeah.
a break in the system, but once this is all sorted out again, I'm quite sure we will get hit with a TC grant, OTC grant,
Yeah.
to pay the rent, because that's what has normally happened.
I'm sure that's the case, but I think
But you just looked last year, didn't you,
this
last year?
purely simply from a legal perspective, including that clause means that if there were an argument, and there shouldn't be, I take your point, and we're paying it effectively anyway, but if there were an argument, they're saying that there's going to be a problem for them. If we take it out and there were an argument, there's not a problem for them. So therefore, I would go with the advice given to that group.
But if we take it out, we are effectively, as Jerry said, saying you've got a 20-year lease, and there's a review date in it. That's not a review of the lease, is it? That's a review of the rent.
There's a break clause in it, but there's not really.
There's a break clause for them, but not for us. or
Break
for-
clause to them, yeah, it's a tenant only break clause.
Well, it's a 2-year commitment anyway, which
It's a
is,
20
Yeah.
years,
whichever, whether.
unless they give us 6 months notice.
Yeah, whether it was in or out, it's 2-year commitment, which is, I'm kind of ambivalent, I'm
20 years is a long time.
I'll just go with what they say and just make it nice and simple. I mean, David is acting for them, so therefore he's not acting for us, so he's out of the loop because it's a conflict of interest. But I very much doubt that he'll be advising them in such a way that it would make it difficult for either of us. I'll just go with the recommendation we've taken.
Move.
So any other thoughts, points on it? Honestly, it feels uncomfortable, but consensus, then we'll go with it.
The only one that I've got is the general point which I kind of alluded to before, which is that what level of support to the museum is appropriate from the public purse, effectively, and how does it compare with other institutions in the town?
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're giving an awful lot of money, and again and again, we've talked about this,
That's a good point.
to the museum, and is it appropriate?
Well, I was thinking as the discussions were going on and what David was saying, you know, what value is it to the town that somebody, I mean, most people who live here, I don't know who's actually visited the museum. So is it something that attracts outsiders when they come? Therefore it's valuable to businesses and that. Do we have any data on visitors and
I have asked for this as a
donations?
trustee. The information that is presented, I think, is unusable as a planning tool.
Would AI help?
So it's all right, those
Yeah, we need something to get started.
I mean, this is not to say that we're getting into a different debate.
Yes, absolutely.
But my personal view is that they need a strategy for the future. They don't have one.
I would agree. And it's galling for me as a teacher not to be able or want to take my children there. And then
There are two different questions being debated here. One is, are the terms of the lease, excluding the term of the lease, are the terms in the lease acceptable as proposed or not? To me, I recommend that they are. I propose that they are. The second question, which I think is your question, Max, and your question, Joe, is should it be 20 years? Because we don't know, we're spending lots of money on them effectively over the next 20 years. What are they going to do with what's an ongoing plan?
The town council has already approved a 20-year lease.
Okay.
Previously, the town council has already approved a 20-year
So we're
lease.
talking
In
about.
that case, I'll just say about terms in which
Yeah.
case I think we just go with what's being recommended.
So
What's
effectively,
being proposed.
we have a proposal that we don't confirm the addition to the leases to new direct negatives, is that right?
Yeah.
We have
We confirm the exclusion of the.
We confirm the exclusion of the,
So the proposal was that we strike clause 6 from the agreement,
Yes.
which is what we're
And
saying.
we have a proposed seconder.
sorry, who proposed that?
John,
John proposed,
Rupert
Rupert
seconded.
Rupert
Yeah,
seconded.
I did.
are we all in favour of vote on that then? Okay.
Do you have another notice to whether to allow the mayor back in?
I'm not sure it's on
No.
the agenda.
That would be the height of pedantry.
Put Tom Cruise on in the
I
meantime.
haven't got started yet.
Well, it's certainly right next door to the patients of your dear colleagues.
David?
He's gone already.
We've finished Mission
It's
Impossible.
halfway up the Blackthorn Road.
Because frankly, all the towns see it can be a minefield.
It is, not can be, it is.
Because with best attentions, it's been dealt with rather ad hoc, pragmatically, rather than from the top downwards, which is inexplicable, except in France perhaps. That's what they were doing.
That's a whole other debate.
Right, thank you for that. Hopefully the next one might be a bit quicker. To receive an update on the Amble Walking Hour.
It would be quicker. I've spoken to the archives at school and they're keen to support it, but they had a recording project going on which has moved to our community action group and they haven't quite got it started yet. So lots of people are very keen. I'm taking my classes down to the cemetery for the lessons around Remembrance Sunday, seeing the war graves there, and I'll start talking to them about doing something but a cemetery-based version. So some movement, no delivery yet, but somewhere around Christmas, something like that.
Doubtless will be updated in due course. Right, let's move on to financial matters. First item is to approve the bank reconciliation, balance sheet and budget for September. The various figures are set out on your agenda. Simply to approve those. Are we happy to do so? That's a wave yes. That's a happy yes. With us. Thank you. The next item is the payments for this month. The schedule of payments for September 2023 are retrospectively approved.
No, that's not, it's not right.
I think that might be because somebody's used the wording from August.
Yeah,
Or the wording we used in September for payments in August, where we are retrospectively approving them. I think we can just take out.
yeah,
the
just
word
take out retrospective, it's not retrospective.
Even as I read it, I thought. Yeah, so if we remove the word retrospectively, are we happy to approve those payments that are set out? That's the way it proposes. So, seconds again. Those in favour? Thank you. Right, to consider the quote for the replacement of the doors in the courthouse courtyard. Is everybody familiar with which doors we're talking about?
No, I got confused. If they're barbers and, are they the big doors?
Yeah, that's what I.
We talk-
when I
Yeah.
got the
My
police-
understanding is we're talking about those big doors
Yeah,
that are invariably open,
yeah.
but are not actually in the best of health. Put it that way. Now, that was part of the paperwork that didn't manage to get printed. Printer decided it had quite enough at that stage, so I haven't actually got the quote in front of me.
There's
However,
there's 2 or 3 quotes on there.
Yeah, and they're,
two
they're
quotes on
around.
Yeah,
Obviously, one of them mentions the barbers and one of them mentions the.
that was as if we were going to have both sets done, but I don't think the other ones are as in need of immediate replacement, but the,
So that's the first quote,
Yeah.
courthouse barbers.
Yeah,
And the second
my
one.
recollection, having frequented there relatively recently, can't say I was struck by any issue with the door not looking in reasonable nick, so I wouldn't say it's a pressing thing.
the second quote, they were the company that replaced the big arch doors
Right.
a few years ago.
There with you, Paul. Oh, right, councillor Wade first.
Isn't this an estates matter? Why has it gone straight to the council? Shouldn't it come from estates with a recommendation? Why has it come here?
It's
straight
because
away?
it's above £2,000.
It should have gone to estates for estates to have an opinion before it comes here. I've got no knowledge of whether it's needed or anything. Shouldn't the estates have a look at this and they said it is in need? We do need the quotes and recommend it to the council.
It was just in a way of getting it done before the winter, because they're in a very bad way.
But I can't vote on this because I have no knowledge of the state of the doors and I've got nobody to tell me that the doors are in the state.
Well, I
Looking at the
witnessed
chair
that.
of estates and wondering whether or not you could be told.
Yeah.
Whether-
I witnessed them when I went on the town tour with Lisa, and the barbers and the hair lock grooming were both complaining about them.
Yeah.
And we looked at them and they were in a pretty poor state of repair, but I'm not a carpenter, so I can't say from a professional viewpoint, but from a layperson's viewpoint, they did look pretty in need of something doing to them. And they looked beyond repair, is what I would say.
Yeah, and our maintenance team have already looked at them and they can't fix them. And they will let water in the winter.
My point remains just a matter of principle. Shouldn't things like this come through estates who've got responsibility for our estate, and this is moved to the estate? Or does somebody, does a guard decide that because it's above £2,000, it's nothing to do with the estates, it comes to the council who haven't had a look at the doors?
Well, it's an interesting point you raise. I mean, because there is a constraint on the spending powers of committees, which is set at £2,000, it has to be set somewhere. I think that probably traditionally, if quotes had come in for over that figure, they'd come straight to full council. I take board the point that you make. It might lead to a certain amount of delay, although had it been before estates at the end of September, they could have recommended to the full council that in their view it ought to be done. It might well be that had that been the scenario, you might have felt a lot happier about accepting the recommendation made by the committee set up for the purpose. We aren't in that situation. However, we have heard both from Clark and from Councillor Gray. In Councillor Gray's case, a lay impression, I have to say that somebody who's sort of opened the door and walked through it hadn't particularly noticed it, that I wasn't really looking.
We have renovated a few properties though, so I've seen some shabby doors.
Yeah, but it was also following a conversation with Lisa that I said, let's get quotes. So it came from me.
So I'm fine, I'm happy to propose it or send it, whatever. I think going forward, if it's to do with the estate, the estate's committee should look and say something to us as part of the recommendation, because otherwise we hit behind. Just as a curiosity.
Do other councillors agree with that approach? I'll take.
Yeah, we
Clark's
can't
view first.
always do that though, because if something comes in after estates, but it's quite urgent, this is the next meeting.
If something comes in that's urgent, if the doors are rotting, it's not something that's happening.
They are pretty urgent. They are pretty urgent.
And only in the last 2 weeks, we've not had this issue before. That's my point. If the windows were smashed, it's cost £2,000, different. But the doors rotting, they don't rot in 2 weeks, they've been rotting for several weeks or months.
Lita did the tour around the 11th September, didn't you? So this quote came on the 26th September, which was the day after our last meeting. So effectively, the next meeting will be next week. Well, then we wouldn't be able to recommend it until 4 weeks' time. So the timeline.
Yeah.
In this particular instance, I've accepted that. I'm saying it's a matter of principle. Should the Estates Matters go before the Estates Committee before they can hear?
Was that not discussed last meeting?
And my instinct would be to agree with you, subject to timings.
Yes, of course.
But it does appear that in this instance,
That's what's
and
always considered.
maybe we should have picked up at an earlier stage, because you're right, they don't suddenly deteriorate that rapidly. So clearly, had we looked up and taken this on board 3 months earlier, the decision would have been taken in a different way and much earlier. But the reality is, it was looked at, it's been actioned, quote's been obtained, the quote missed estates who couldn't therefore have commented on it in any event, and it would delay it if we then went to estates and then came to the next one. So
I think
I
it's
think-
an opportune moment by the two businesses,
Yeah.
while Lisa and I were inspecting it, and I think they had mentioned it before, because you said the maintenance guys had looked at it, so
Yeah,
it must have been raised before. But I think the two people that are renting the premises, while Lisa and I were looking all around all of the courthouse premises, used that opportunity to say, look, we're not happy with this.
which is fair enough, you know, in the sense that's part of the purpose. It's
Yeah.
not only for you to see with your own eyes.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
An occupant raises an issue with you, you can try and figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have got quotes for the replacement of these doors. Does somebody want to make any kind of a proposal?
It's proposing to replace one door, is that right?
Yeah, just the one.
The barbs.
With the bulbs, yeah.
Yeah.
Proposed by councillor Hutton, seconded by councillor Rycroft. Barnes.
The two quotes.
Yeah, there are two quotes, there's two different companies.
Thomas Briggs or
Nicole,
So-
Nichols.
I'm not sure what we approved, which quote we approved.
One is £2,830.80, the other one comes in at
plus VAT.
£2,890.60.
Yeah, one is a quote plus an estimate.
There's about 60 quid in there.
60 quid. One of them says they'll do everything, the other one says they'll do it, and then prices in a slightly more
Go with
complex
the
way.
quote then. Go with the one that's a quote, firm quote, not the one that's an estimate.
Well, they're both saying they're based on today's prices and won't go up. So there's a quote.
There should be a proposal which says we can accept this quote. and then we can vote on it. The note just say we'll spend that money, it doesn't say who we'll spend it with.
So that's the one that says quote.
So
So the other one like that.
Nichols Joinery is one,
Mhm.
the other is
Thomas
Right,
and
there.
Briggs.
They're £60 cheaper, but they're an estimate, not a quote.
so you've got one that's a quote, one that's an estimate. I
And
think
Nichols
we
Joinery
certainly
did the
use
big-
Thomas and Briggs.
Replace the big
before.
gate.
Don't know about Nichols.
Nichols did the previous work.
Yeah, the large archway gates, they replaced them.
And they stuck with their original quote.
Yeah.
They
I
do
would
a good
still
job.
go with them, because there are no quantity in there, it's a quote.
So I'll propose that we go with the Nichols Jewellery quote for the father's door.
I'll second.
I think you can slightly over the discussion.
That's fine, that's
So
fine.
I think we got there at the end. Right.
Just moving
Th-
on.
Those in favour of accepting that particular quote?
I second.
So that's united. Everybody. Right. The next one, this is something that came before the Finance and General Purposes Committee, and was, I don't think I'm putting it too strongly to say, a recommendation of Finance Officer Paul Smith, who suggested that it would be appropriate to set up an investment account with CCLA. I think the minutes of that meeting might have been circulated the previous meeting that we had. And this is now simply seeking approval to proceed with that recommendation.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that it is recommended to us by the finance officer, we're supposed to be making those sort of recommendations. I'll propose it from the chair. Does somebody want to second it?
Can I just ask a question beforehand? I couldn't work out from the letter what the terms of the account were. Is it say instant access, or is it
It's, I can't remember since access.
just putting 3 months reserves into it when we potentially have some large amounts of expenditure coming up in the next few months?
Yeah, we're leaving 3 months running costs within the current bank account, but then the remaining reserves will go into this. But you can access it immediately. Yeah, so like if we need it, yeah, it's not stuck there for 6 months. Yeah, so we can still access.
Yeah.
But there will always be 3 months running costs within the current bank account.
And all that was discussed at the Finance and General Purposes Committee, so the Finance Officer recommended to the FNGP, the FNGP said, good idea, this is what we recommend, and agreed, so Councillor Mossman said, then that's fine, and we're just seeking approval for that final step.
Yeah, I was just after the information that,
No, it's reasonable.
given what we're talking about now
Yeah,
later,
yeah.
we could be talking large sums that would then be tied up for months.
But it doesn't appear as if there will.
That's fine, that's fine.
So we have a proposal, it is seconded. All those in favour of setting that up in accordance with the advice? Thank you. To consider joining the Rural Market Town Group. It might be my imagination, but I have a feeling that we have previously been
Yes.
in this group, and then for whatever reason we let it lapse. Obviously because we didn't feel we were getting any particular value for money out of it.
Yeah, I don't know if you were a member of it a long time ago, but we got a sort of quite a free or very reasonably priced membership a couple of years ago. And if you remember, it was when we were having Zoom meetings, a guy from the group came and spoke. But we haven't used it. And I've spoken to a few other councils. I think they're about, Findon, Rushden, Finborough and Higham are all in it. So I asked them, were they using it? The only one that came back was Higham, and they said they'd renewed it because it was quite persistent. But they hadn't used it, which is very similar to our scenario. But when you look at that, they're a group that are constantly looking at the government and ensuring that any decisions that are made, that rural communities are considered. So they're looking to rural housing, in affordable housing, they're looking at doctors, surgeries, lots of things. So there are, but it's just, we've not really tapped into it.
Now, that may be as much our fault in the
Yeah,
sense
oh,
as theirs,
definitely.
as much as if we don't utilise it in the way that it could be utilised, maybe we should be doing more. Councillor.
As far as I can gather from what the clerk has told us, essentially the rural market town group are a pressure group. In other words, what they do is make representations in higher quarters, including with ministers. Am I correct in this summary?
Yes, potentially, yeah. Yeah, they'd have newsletters, they have webinars that you can go. I mean, I just haven't had a time to look at it. So I don't know whether if we did look into it more, if we attended more, then we would get more out of it.
Well, how much would it cost us, assuming we did decide to
It's just over £115 a year.
How much?
115,
Yeah, some-
£115, is that for every day or just for the year?
that's for the year.
Well, I'd be happier if we defer the decision perhaps to the next full council meeting, to give them the opportunity to put out feelers, ask questions, and find out what they do apart from circulating the glossy materials to their members.
They have been to one of our meetings and told us, and they have on their website got information of what the benefits are, and there are some good benefits. It's
Well,
just
benefits in the sense of things they've actually achieved in terms of some improvements to planning law or access to ad hoc grants, those sort of benefits.
well,
Solid benefits.
they're looking at that sort of thing.
They're looking at
Yeah,
it.
but they hold webinars that we can attend to if we're members. They send out newsletters.
So it's an advice resource as well as a
Yeah,
lobby group.
So there are some side benefits.
I'll take Councillor Shearer first, then Councillor Hutton.
Okay, I'll be very brief. In a sense, it's a follow-up from the previous comment. I'm against it for the simple fact that I have no statement in front of me of what the benefits are. So I don't
Well, I've
quite
just
see
got
what
it up
I'm being asked
online.
to. And that's not the point. That's not the point. It's
Do you know what
not,
the benefits
yeah, but
are?
it's not here.
No, you're right.
They're not telling us what the benefits are. We shouldn't have to go and look it up. But so I've not been given enough information to make a decision, so my answer is no. There we go.
Councillor Hutton.
I think we should decide it.
I was going to say, well, for the sake of £115, we could just say, rather than asking them to go away and look at it, and then come back and decide it again next month, just say, let's spend £115, go and see if we get anything out of it. If we don't get anything out of it, we don't renew next year. That was where I was.
Councillor Wade.
If membership is £115 a year, 150 councillors with an income of £17,000 a year, it doesn't sound to me as though the recruit is going to have much time or money to lobby anybody. And if they've only got a 50% market share, and they're the only organisation that does it, it doesn't strike me as though they're very much.
Choose a website.
I don't have any good feel about this. But to Councillor Hutton's point, let's not defer it, let's make a decision either to go or not go, because it's 150 quid. I don't think they've got much in here to make me want to vote for them, but I'm not necessarily against it not to vote for it. But £17,000 income is not the same to me, they're a big lobbying group.
Any other views, or shall we just go straight to a vote on it? Right, okay, let's take a vote. Does somebody want to make a proposal, one way or the other, either to pay it or not to pay it?
In the light of points made by comments, confirm I believe we should say no.
So
That should-
I have a proposal to say no, I have it seconded. All those in favour of not joining the rural market.
I'm persuaded by that.
Yeah, full house.
I think that was probably the majority. Can I just-
Yes.
It's unanimous, so.
right, can I nominate one of you to tell them, please, because I will get it.
Right, that might tell us all we need to know.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to take us Clark's time if we're not careful. Right, let's move on, because I'm conscious that it's 9:10 and we've still got a number of items there to run through, so hopefully rather quicker. To receive the report from the speed indicator device, any comments?
Actually, no, we drafted, average speed still 25 miles an hour, which is good.
I think it's actually gone down.
It's been 25, it's 25 or 26 all the time, but the majority of people are speeding, so it's all good. Do we need to move that at some point? No, that's fine, no, okay. Hopefully we'll buy a second one, so that's fine.
We voted by a second. We're not voted by a second.
I think it's in the transport. We should definitely buy one.
Right. Unless there's anything else arising out of that. Planning, simply to receive the minutes of the last planning meeting, they have been circulated. I'm just trying to refresh my memory as to whether there was anything hugely exciting in there. And I think short answer is council's been picked up on the work that's going to happen at Prince William School, which is quite exciting. Just as an aside, we've been bombarded by requests to attend our next planning meeting. David Wilson Homes are coming back for tranche number 5, I think it will now be, of the Stoke Dora Road development. We'll come back to us yet again next month. And Angle School want to talk to us because they're finally coming forward with their plans to redevelop the former primary school site. So on the basis that there are those two things, we were talking about starting the planning meeting at 7 o'clock. And any councillors who want to attend in order to see what these people have to say in presentations and to ask questions are welcome to join the planning committee. Let us move on to estates. The minutes of that meeting have also been circulated. Is there anything in there that...
Well, no, I think we'll come on to, I'm sure.
There are a couple of further items on the agenda
Yeah.
that kind of come out of that meeting, so
Yeah.
unless there's anything else
No.
to ask. Right, so to consider and approve of the proposal and recommendation from the estates, so there it is, clear and unambiguous, we are being recommended by estates to relocate the workshop to Fletton House, and to approve all preliminary costs and to agree next steps. So I'll just talk us briefly through
So-
this.
Yeah, I think me and Ian probably, but yeah, the lease essentially is up on the workshop at East Road. And the rent that has been, I think, proposed is an increase, and it's been going on a while now, I think since last year's estates visit. The idea was floated with moving the workshop, because there's a lot of space in there, there's a lot of stuff in the workshop. Moving it somewhere else, and eventually it's come to the plan of having it here outside in a shipping container type unit, of which there are a number of quotes for you to look at.
Where will it be? Where would it be placed?
In
I
the
can't
area
just, I
down
can never remember
here.
if it's this number, that's, but yeah, literally out there.
And the other proposal we went and looked at last time was using the downstairs kitchen space and warded that off, so we've still got the old place group as part of the hub that we can use, but that kitchen area will become sort of a workshop area. So there'll be like a store outside and a workshop inside.
Exactly.
And it would have the added benefit of giving Emma's team some uniformity.
Yeah.
Plus we'd save an awful lot of money
Yeah.
in rent, heating costs, telephone costs.
Yeah.
You know, 10,000 a year.
And we have spoken about trying to come up with an alternative for a considerable period of time, and everyone looked at the possibility of putting something down on the sort of rugby club area, so down Occupation Road. But there were quite a lot of issues around that, and it would be quite costly to, in a sense, build from scratch. The plan of using a container is of course similar to something we recently adopted with what Philip was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
There are a lot of the sort of road signage and cones and all that sort of material is now stored in that sort of a unit in his.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Ian, you spoke to him about a container type thing. Is that right?
Yeah, Philip stores all his wine in containers. It's one of the concerns that when we discussed this previously has been containers sweating and getting damp, etc.
Yeah.
These are insulated, he's got a lot of value of wine and they're all in good nick. So it's just a matter of having well ventilated, well insulated containers. I think nearly all the ones that we've got quotes for would fit that. So I think that and our own container down there have been helped us get over the line on this, plus the increase in rent.
There is connected to that, I think it's the next item on the agenda, or is it?
That's the one.
No, sorry, no, there's the gate essentially out there. Would need changing essentially, and there are a number of quotes again in the files for automatic type gates.
So the suggestion is quite simply that we take out quite a lot of wooden fence.
Yeah.
Put a sliding gate in, which would allow one or both vans to be able to drive in and back in with the trailer, the lawnmower on. Store the lawnmower in the container, maybe not the trailer.
That could probably just have a tarpaulin over it for the time being.
And then have that area as our storage area, with hopefully access around to that side, provided the containers are well placed. It's secure, it's well located. Potentially, the other thing that we would potentially look at is to move the bin store.
Yeah.
Which is sort of in the way there. We gave it parking space back and be able to put the bins through that gate, or the bin, that we want bin now. So effectively, there's a bit of capital expenditure, putting electricity out to the shed, putting a divider in down here. But really, within a year or so of our rental payments down there, would have paid for it. Within a 5-year lease, would have saved about £50,000.
Councillor Hutton or Councillor
I was just going to say, I think it's a really good idea, leaving aside the money saving, which is significant. I think it sounds like a good idea in terms of getting the team up here with the rest of the staff, which is great. Going to be some advantages of that. And also potentially facilitating, if we've got the vans up here, then we can charge them up here when they go electric. So, that's all good stuff, I think.
Councillor.
I think the idea is sound for all the reasons that have been articulated. What I don't see is a comparative cost. There's nothing here which says, here's how much the rent will be, and so therefore this capex is greater or lesser than, what the payback period is, how quickly we get that money back. I don't know if there's anything in the budget. So unless I've missed it.
You haven't missed it, but you've had to allocate everything together. So I had a good look. At the moment, we pay £13,759 a year for East Road.
Yeah.
The proposed rent on the new deal would, I think, be £16,800.
So how much?
16,800 plus all the stuff we have: fire extinguishers, electric, water, gas, CCTV, telephone, etc.
So assuming those operational costs remain, and they won't for
Some will, some won't.
What's our capital expenditure proposed? And full?
A rough outlay. Well, it depends on the quotes.
Of course.
Some of the containers are 2,000, some are 10,000. So, in my
If we
estimate,
went the way that you're recommending we go, what would the capex be?
I estimate from this roughly, I think it would be roughly 23, up to 23 in the first year, depending on the gate. So we'll be £13,000 down that year.
But we see a payback
By the end of
Cost
year five,
recovery.
we would be 50,000 up.
You see cost recovery within the 18 months.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Second question.
Mhm.
How many parking spaces will we lose by doing that?
Our estimation, no.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa and I were looking at today, the one just here.
But we
Yeah.
might be able to claim all back by the end of the.
So that's right.
Third question then, from a budgetary perspective, have we got a budget to make this happen this year? Or are we going to have to dig into reserves? Because I don't remember seeing anything in the budget for this capital expenditure.
The slight issue, I think I'm allowed to talk about the terms of how much time we have.
None.
No. Potentially, if we don't accept the 5-year lease,
Yeah.
we have roughly
Oh,
4 and 6
6
months
months.
that we're rejected. So it becomes,
Is this a landlord tenant thing?
it becomes the time might suggest we dig into our reserves
Okay,
to make it,
To make it
because we now have to make.
okay, so that's really helpful, thank you.
Councillor Shearer.
It's really an observation. I think the discussion we've just had, and it also the part goes back to the discussion earlier about doors at the court. I think it would be helpful when things and when essentially things are moving from one committee to this council, that it's clearer why that decision has already been made and is being recommended. Because essentially, I mean, you're asking the right questions, but they've all been discussed in estates, and you really should not have to ask them again.
No, if they were in that, then I could have gone, great,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense.
So it's just.
If you had a paper from estates that had set out
Yeah.
how they got to that
Yeah.
recommendation.
I think the only issue is that because of the time limit, we recommended it in the minutes, but we didn't have sight of the quotes, etc., until the last week or so. So
Can I just, I spoke to Lisa about this today, and I think from this meeting tonight, the main decision is to whether you want to terminate the lease or not renew, or whether you do.
Yeah.
Everything else, although we will have to look at putting in a container and a few things pretty quickly, I think we can sort of move up here when we're not fully established, and then it can be, so that would give estates next week to look at all of these quotes that have come in and get a little bit more, meat on the bones for the next.
Although you can't really make the decision to terminate unless we know what the indicative costs are up here, which we now have.
Which is why it's come here.
Yes.
That's great.
Just should all that be approved, that we do get a container or whatever, then Emma would have to do some kind of variation clause for the contract to say they're working in a different location.
Yeah.
Just so, even though it's still in Arundel and it's not so, it's like 10 miles away, but it's to be on the right side of the law, to notify them that they report here and not.
Yeah.
If that's not written in the contract.
It's just,
And they're so we're quite happy with the relocation.
yeah, I'm sure. It's just forwarding to do it.
Just to clarify something, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying we worked, I think Lisa worked it out, but it's, if we were to recommend, or we did, that we terminate the lease, we've then, I think we've got 6, is that exactly right? We've got 6 months from that day?
it depends on whether it's 6 months from the email or 6 months.
Right, okay.
So I think that contract.
Could be near a
When I read it, it was if we chose not to approve, we would get 6 months' notice. Now, as of this moment in time, we've not said either way. So I would hope it would be from when.
The decision.
Yeah.
It sounds like what you're saying is that even if it was the shorter period, we can still ensure
I
a
think so.
relatively seamless transition. So it sounds to me like there are two halves to this almost. The first half is, do we indicate an intention to terminate the lease? Presumably the answer to that is no. Then we don't need to continue to discuss the rest of it, but if our decision is that we terminate the lease, we'll be doing so on the basis that we're going to go with the recommendation, because the one follows the other, in essence. Do I have a proposal?
I'm happy to propose, are we doing one at a time?
Yeah.
I'm happy to propose that we terminate the lease at East Road.
I'll second that.
All those in favour of termination? No. Right. Do we now have a proposal? Are we going to suggest that estates look at this further next week and then come back to here with perhaps a fully sort of worked out proposal?
I'll be more comfortable.
I'm not sure who to go to, but
I think we're going to say
At least two of us aren't here in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So estates is going to be quite small.
This committee is a committee of one.
We avowed to
But it won't be a quorum committee, which is a practical problem. Sorry, I talked across you.
Sorry, I was going to say, you may not have seen that Val has actually emailed tonight, so she will be there.
Okay, that's good.
So the meeting will go ahead.
I'll be there as well, so.
Yeah,
Please
that's
follow.
you.
Yeah, do so,
No, three of us.
so you, me and Val.
Yes.
I'll take the clerk notes in case it affects anything that we're about to discuss.
I'm just a bit concerned, because obviously, all of these quotes are way over what estates can approve.
Appreciate
So if you wait for certain items on there, your event, it's going to be another month before, and so you've lost a month of your 6 months. I would suggest that you consider allowing some money for at least to put in an order for a container,
And the gate might be quite important too.
at least.
So would we, if I can just ask, would we be allowed to say as full council that we're willing to put an estimate, I don't know, 20,000 on the whole thing? Or do we?
Or I'd just say,
item by item?
set aside some money for a container to start with.
Have we decided that we are going the container route as opposed to, you know, changing something within Fletton House for the workshop?
We can't
So
store.
that's
Yeah.
the storage only.
The estate's discussion last year was that the kitchen downstairs could be a workshop, it's internal, it's warm, it's pleasant, it's
You
decent,
still
it's
need
got
some
space.
storage.
But to put a right on the lawnmower, etc., we can't take it over. Plus the space down here is useful.
Okay.
And the other benefit of the container is it gets us outside of planning concern about building
Yeah.
a big metal
Yeah.
building. And it might be in 5 years' time we decide that's the way to go, but time is being taken away from us.
That's all right. I think there are two options actually. Option one is the estates meet next week and have an extraordinary meeting the week after. We spend £20,000. Or the other option is to say, is we approve £20,000 subject to the estates committee being satisfied with the vote they give. I don't care which way we go, but I think just to say, we'll spend the money and sort it out later on is not the way to go.
No, I would agree with that as well.
So either way, I don't care which way we go. I just need guidance from the estates people.
I think it's pragmatic to do the latter.
I would agree with where I'm
Okay, so
I would,
£20,000
yeah,
subject to.
I would reword that slightly, and say something along the lines in conjunction with the clerk. So you're giving me the authority, but I will liaise with the estates committee. I think that will, because I think you're going against the terms of reference for estates, which normally you would review that, and that's not been on that.
I'll take
So
it.
that's
Yeah.
checks and balances.
So if you just put me in it, obviously it won't be just me making the decisions, but
It's what-
estates can sit next week and,
Subject to final approval of the clerk.
so long as you're happy with the fact that it's going to be a storage container, there's going to be a change to the gate and a few, and obviously the work to that kitchen area.
So if it goes ahead with the state's approval and your final say so, I'm fine with that. I want at the next council meeting for something, what money's been spent and why. So although it's too late not to spend money, we as a council, I think, have responsibility in ensuring it has been spent.
Yeah.
Well, on that basis, I propose a budget of £20,000 to be spent on all the stuff that's needed. You can think better of it, subject to the clerk's final approval and full presentation of costs at the November council meeting.
I would have to second that.
Should it be a presentation and review of costs in case it needs to go above the 20,000?
Well, if it's above the 20,000, it would have to be a separate proposal, because that then would fall outside this motion.
Well, that's what I'm saying, you could build into it.
Yes, absolutely.
The provision to review that figure at the next meeting.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not all going to happen in the next 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, but it, just so that we can start doing a few things.
So I'll make that proposal, and then we'll work it approved, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are we all clear what we're voting for?
Yes.
Would that be repeated?
Repeat it one more time, put that bit about the review.
So I'm proposing that this council approve a budget of £20,000 to allow the estates people to move up to Fletton House and the associated works, subject to the estates committee agreement and the council's approval, and subject to a review and presentation at the November full council.
I think when you said the council's approval, I think you probably meant the council.
Absolutely.
And then subject to review of this. Well, it's quite a complex proposal, but I think it's clear.
It's all got
Anyway.
That's all right.
So,
Proposed, seconded.
those seconded, all those in favour of that? We got there in the end. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Mayor, at this stage, I'm afraid I'd like to make an apology to the borough for family reasons.
By all means, yes, I'm sorry it's gone on. We're getting closer, but, sorry, few matters to deal with.
Yes, we covered the main substantive ones, I think.
Can I speak to the next one? The transitional presentation on solar panels.
By all means.
So I'm just briefly going to say, I think this is a really simple proposition here. We're not talking about spending money, we're talking about quotes. So Transition Island's initial work, looking at the practicality of installing solar panels on the roof here. It's an excellent roof for the proposal. It will be a long-term investment. It's not, it doesn't pay back overnight, it pays back over 10 years. But it's if we're going to be doing something to meet our obligations and our commitments in terms of looking at our environmental impact, I think it's the right thing to do. Because it's simply getting quotes and then bringing a final proposal to council, I think it's a no-brainer to actually say, let's just get on to it, please. I'll propose.
I'll second it.
Opposed? And I think, well, I'm quite sure we've had that first. Councillor Wade probably will. All those in favour of that? Makes sense, thank you very much. Comments? Councillor Wade, I know that this is your paper. Yep, which you did discuss with me briefly before you were pushed.
Well, it's out of paper, so I'm assuming you've read it, I'm proposing it, and I'm going to second that we can vote. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them forward. Hearing none.
I mean, when it was first canvassed to me, my first thought was, it's a good idea, but we can't do it because we have to have the meeting at a particular point, and then I was advised that
30th of June.
that actually that wasn't the case, and we could do this. And bearing in mind that it can be done, I can see the logic in doing it. So I'm quite happy with that as a proposal.
Thank you.
So it's proposed by Councillor Wade, I'm quite happy to second it. All those in favour? Yeah, everybody. Thank you again. The next bit sort of comes out of that to a degree. It's to agree to producing an annual report to be published prior to the annual town meeting. It almost explains itself in terms of what's on the agenda, but is there anything else you want to add to that?
Just need to get the time right and responsibilities, but I think we can take any comments, can't we?
Are we happy for Commons to take that forward?
Absolutely.
I don't think it needs a formal proposal as such, but we just
No,
agree
you
that.
can't dispute it.
Commons will come back to us. That leaves but one matter. I'd have to at this point say that please noting view of the special and or confidential nature of the business about to be transacted, it is advisable in the public interest that the public be temporarily excluded and that they are instructed to withdraw Although there were no members of the public present, that would mean that the broadcast would stop. Does anybody second that proposal? Councillor Hutton, all those in favour? That's good. So this one stopped.